Everybody, how's everybody? My name is Gabriela Villalobos, and I welcome you to this last session of the
Ha
2020,
pasado
which is
muy
focused
rápido el tiempo
on
estas
sustain.
últimas tres
It
sesiones.
was this last three sessions have come flying, and we've had days with great speakers on very relevant issues, and this is not going to be the exception today. But before continuing, as usual, I will tell you that I'm in great company with Ms. Cortez of the sustainability area of the Killing Chamber of Construction and Mr. Rodriguez from Acción. Hello, how are you? Thanks for being with us today. Oh, good morning. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for being here. As I told you before, we're going to continue covering this sustainability matter that we have been talking about for these days, which has the environment of one of the sub areas and which has become uh, an included demand in construction. So nobody can be foreign to the environmental demands for sustainable development of any project. And this is why we're covering the sustainability of core business and environmental management. In order to cover this relevant issue, we have the participation of great experts. But before leaving you with them, I would like to remind you how the platform works, where we expect you to participate very actively as you have done in the previous meetings. I'm talking about Menti. For those who are just joining now, let me tell you that through this platform, you can send us questions in a very simple manner. You only have to enter www.menti.cl or com ideas, and there you will see in the bar you have a number and you just need to follow the instructions. As usual, please have a separate device if you're connecting through your laptop. Please use your cell phone to enter Menti to be able to follow the presentation of the speakers as well as the sending us questions. You can enter the questions through Menti. You can also raise your hand through Zoom, and we will give you some minutes so you can ask directly to the speakers about the issues they will be talking about. This is going to be at the end. First, we will have the talks, and then we will have some time for conversation and questions. First, I'll leave you with the speaker today. He's Richard McWilliams, Director of Sustainability and Turning 1000. Welcome, Richard. Thanks for being part of this day with us.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction.
Richard, we can see you, but we can't hear you.
Oh, moment.
I can hear you. They can't.
So just to check, can you hear me, Ivo?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I can. No problem.
Okay. And the audience can hear me now too?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Good. I did have some slides that I believe were being translated. If somebody wants to put those up, or would you like me to put my English slides up?
Okay. If you can show them to us in English, it would be great.
Yeah, okay. Let me just do 1 second and do a sharing. Okay, can you see my? Can you
Yes,
see
we
my
can see
slides
them.
now?
Yes.
Fantastic. So with that, I will start my presentation and hopefully take you through some information that is interesting and informative. Initially, to introduce myself, I'm Richard McWilliams, and I am Director of Sustainability Consulting for a company called Turner & Townsend, who are a global project and program management company. And we do have offices in the region, and I think we were involved, for example, in Santiago Airport's development. So my job today is to help you to understand more about the sustainability of buildings in use when they're being used as core business, and in particular around the net zero elements and how retrofitting of upgrades to the building fabric and building systems can help people get to net zero. And as I believe the audience has a number of people who build buildings, who are constructors, also to help you to understand what kind of measures they are, what technical measures, and also the types of finances and some of the challenges that we face. And so I'll share some principles first of all, and then I will go through 4 case studies, one for a school, one for an office, a university, and a hospital. We also have a lot of experience in housing, and if people want to know more, I'm sure they can ask in the Q&A. So first of all, as a group of organizations that build buildings, are constructors, why are you interested in those buildings once they have been constructed? Because the job has been done. Well, in the UK, the whole construction industry in the UK delivers to the built environment only 1% of the actual estate every year. So the whole of the construction industry focuses on 1% of the building portfolio every year. Every year, 99% of the estate, of the properties and buildings and homes in the UK already exists. And broadly speaking, the way the maths works out is that if we have to be net zero by 2050, actually 80% is already here, it's already built. And so for the construction industry to take part in a journey to net zero and to make it a good business journey, then actually, rather than the 1%, we should focus on the 80%. It's a big market. On my second point, there is a more human reason. In the UK, and I appreciate Chile and UK, you may think of different climates, but as I understand it, there is actually areas or seasons of extreme cold, as well as very warm summers. It's not, and in the UK even, would you imagine, we suffer from overheating of buildings, even in the UK. And 10,000 people a year die from living in homes that can't deal with the heat. And unfortunately, a similar number of 10,000 or so people die in the UK every year purely from living in a cold home. And that's terrible. And, you know, COVID has been a tragedy for everybody. However, that shouldn't take us off the principle that actually we shouldn't allow that many people to die simply because of the condition of the building. And I guess the final point is that actually in the UK, for example, the expectation is that 200 billion, and I think it will be closer to £1 trillion sterling, will be spent trying to get the heat and the buildings in the UK to net zero. And that presents, and that's capital investment that constructors will need to deliver against. So they are, I think, 3 very good reasons why we should be looking at this space. My question is, how big is that opportunity for Chile? And I don't know, and you may know better than me, but my estimate would be at least 10 to 30 billion by doing some basic ratios on population, portfolios, etc. So that still presents a very big market. So lots of good reasons to make doing a good thing a very good business decision too. So, but what is this challenge about addressing the buildings during their use around sustainability and net zero? Well, I mean, the main thing that we need to address is energy. That's the main thing that drives carbon emissions in use. And on the left here, you will see a typical office built to the UK regulations and how the energy is derived from heating and cooling and ventilation and hot water and the small plug load, which is everything else that's plugged into the building, whether it's computers or other devices that aren't part of the building systems. On the left, you'll see how it is today and normal, and that's allowed, legal, agreed. However, to achieve our part and to play our part in achieving a net zero country and global solution, we have to get the demand, the energy demand in kilowatt hours per square meter per year down from 160 kilowatt hours to 55. And that is a huge challenge. You will see in that, and this is crazy, but in the UK, you may hear that people complain about it being cold and rainy and horrible, but actually our offices, the primary energy demand is cooling, because in summer, they act as big greenhouses. They all have big windows, and the sun comes in and heats up the place, and it needs actually cooling. You'll notice as actually we get more efficient, that summer overheating changes to winter underheating. So there's no way to win. But what we're saying here is there is a significant movement in overall energy demand to play its role in getting to net zero during its use. And this doesn't include its embodied carbon and all those other things that I'm sure you heard about earlier in the week. So what's the technical solutions typically for this kind of problem, and how much do they cost? I think part of the brief was to provide some indications of the financial business case and the financial aspect. We tend to find that organizations go through, say, 3 stages of interest and ambition and confidence. The stage 1 are marginal gains that are low cost, possibly even no cost, and have a very quick and easy to see payback. Parts of these things are actually things like just, turning down the thermometer on your building control thermostat, switching down the air conditioning, or switching down the heating and wearing a jumper, or wearing lighter clothes during the hot weather. Things like LED lighting. If there is a building anywhere in any country that hasn't got a good reason, that hasn't got LEDs without a good reason, then they really should be changing those as a priority. And there's all kinds of other things there that I won't trouble our interpreter to try and translate for you live on the presentation, but hopefully you can access a Spanish version as well. And as constructors, I'm sure you will recognize all those things. The one thing on that I would say is that people often look at behavioral change. However, in my experience, changing the behaviors of building occupants, whether it's a hospital, a school, or an office, or a home for that matter, is really hard, and also tends to go through a cycle of it works for a little while with lots of effort and communications, it goes up, and the adoption goes up and the savings go up, and then after 3 or 4 months, life gets in the way, people get busy, they have other things to focus on, and they haven't changed their habit, and so they revert to their previous behavior. So anyway, that's stage 1. Stage 2, you would characterize as people that are more confident in driving down consumption. They can see an economic investment case that makes sense. It's a sensible investment. And these are building fabric upgrades and heating and ventilation upgrades, and things like insulation, whether from heat or from the cold. Either way, stopping making the thermal efficiency of the building better. And building management systems, BMS, building management systems replacement, to really optimize how the building works. And they are, you might be investing upwards of £1 million or £2 million sterling, but then seeing payback in a reasonable period of time. If you own the building, that's fine. If you don't own the building, you might worry about investing for a 5 to 10 year period. because you think you might move out at some point, and that's one of the challenges we find. And then finally, the long-term payback is more about actually driving towards net zero, and not necessarily 100% based upon an economic return on investment. Whole-scale boiler replacement, or using things like combined heat and power, CHP, I hope that translates well for you, and then the addition of renewables. Now, one of the things, because they take a long time to pay back, 10 years plus, and that's normally more than most investors can tolerate, certainly in commercial property. However, one trick that you can take, or clients can take, or you can help clients to take, is by blending the portfolio so that you do a lot of low cost, high gain measures like LEDs, and then combine them with things like building management systems and boilers and solar photovoltaics, so that overall you end up in a sensible economic model with a payback of 5 to 6 years. And the sums of money being invested that you will see in the later slides are, in the UK, it would be between £500,000 and maybe £30 million per building, depending on the size of the building. So not small sums of money, and so should be of interest to contractors. Just a couple more slides before I go into the case studies. I won't go into the steps for retrofitting. I guess the point to make here is that this is very similar to any normal construction project process, at least in the UK. However, 2 points to make. One is that a very common model in the UK for energy efficiency retrofit like this is what's called an energy performance contract, EPC. The energy performance contract doesn't buy heating or ventilation products or LED lamps or solar panels. What it buys is energy performance. That means an actual reduction in energy performance or an energy bill saving. So you might buy a 25% energy saving. At that point, the client doesn't actually mind what technical measures you put in, but they require them, they need them to work. And that is what the contract is there to say, it works. Not that I've put them in, not that I've commissioned them, not that they're properly specified, is actually that they deliver the result of 25 or 30% energy bill savings or carbon savings. That's a very powerful procurement model, and if that is new to you as an organization, it certainly is worth a look. It'll definitely be used in Chile, I mean, absolutely 100%, but if it's new to you as an organization, it's worth a look. The final point on this slide is to say that you might think, as a constructor, you only get involved really in the third box once the contract's signed. However, in the UK, we have lots of frameworks now where you sign a relationship with one organization for the first piece of work, and then they can ask you to do all the other pieces of work, all the way from planning. So if you get into a client in the right way, all of a sudden off one project, then you can do their whole portfolio. So that would give you lots and lots of good work with low cost of sale, which as a constructor, I think would be very good business, but it does need to perform. So final thing before the case studies is just to introduce some of the types of challenges that buying organizations face, to help you to understand when they come to market, the challenges that you need to help them to address. Some of these are obvious about, do they have the vision to aim for net zero? Do they believe in it? Is it their number one priority? Because let's face it, for most businesses, it is not. And core business can get in the way, especially, for example, post-COVID. Lots of businesses are struggling and so may not choose to invest any spare capital, if they have any, in this, as opposed to helping their business to be safe. And that final piece is funding. Many people don't have the money to invest in ambitious measures yet. There are lots of other reasons, whether it's, they're unsure of the benefits, or they haven't got the right people to think about it, or that know about it and are able to design the requirements and tender documents. Or it might be just simply that they have a load of buildings that they would really like to do it, but actually don't know where to start. And they have no roadmap. They don't have any data on their buildings as to, what is their energy performance, which technical measures will be good to use. And so they end up not being able to decide anything. And in the UK, I've been doing this for over 10 years, and you wouldn't believe how much effort it is for organizations to invest in a perfectly good investment case for energy efficiency. It's really hard. So please bear with the buying organizations, and if you can help them with any of these, then that would be great. So I'm now going to go through one slide each for 4 case studies. These case studies are from our work for the Mayor of London, the capital city of the United Kingdom, and the Mayor of London, who is paying us to help as many organizations as possible to overcome those challenges. And we call this work the Retrofit Accelerator for workplaces. We call it an accelerator because it's really about putting your foot on the gas and really increasing the scale of projects and the pace of those projects coming to market, because it's no good doing all this in 10 years time, as I'm sure you're aware. So I'll move on to the case studies. Now, there's lots of writing on here, and again, hopefully you will get translated slides. Key things to say for this example is this was a regional local authority, London Borough of Enfield, and they have worked to reduce their footprint on carbon by 45% in the last 8 years. And they have used an invest to save model where they invest a certain amount of money, that delivers some energy and other savings, and they take that saving then to reinvest into new projects. And they have surveyed all their properties, and that's, they've identified 50 buildings that are able to have their energy reduced, and they are not quite halfway through that with 18 buildings. Now, the type of activity we're talking here is very straightforward. Solar panels, LEDs, building management systems, and boiler upgrades. However, they are delivering in the region of 15 to 25% carbon savings. They're delivering over £100,000 of financial savings every year. And that money the investment will pay for itself. And once it has paid for itself, that money every year can be spent on providing public services. So when looking at a long-term business plan, this is about making sure the payback works properly, so that that annual saving can then translate into more funds for public services. So things that happened on this one, I guess, as points of experience, are decision-making in local authorities in England can be very slow. We also find that they tend to want to break the project down into very small chunks, so that at any one project stage, they're not risking very much money until they see that it works. And you may find that is a similar situation in Chile, until clients feel able to be confident in the performance of those projects. So moving on to the next one, we have here some schools, and it's a very different size of projects as the picture shows. And this is another part of London called Hounslow, where 70% of the local authorities' emissions are actually from the schools. And they have 80 schools in the borough, and we have helped them to do very simple measures, again, solar, lighting and building controls. And these have been implemented in 33 schools. You can see here that the capital investment is 1.6 million. So it's not very much per school, not very much at all. And however, this has had the effect on some schools of up to 50% reduction of their energy demand and their carbon saving as a result. With schools, there's all kinds of challenges here in the UK. One is there are a lot of schools that are very small, and so the economic investment case doesn't work very well unless you get lots of them together. Otherwise, there's too much effort for one small building around the contract setup and the project management and everything else like that. So that's why Hounslow got them in a large group of schools. This approach also addressed another key issue, which is every one of them has a headmaster or a head teacher. Every one of them has a building manager. And in the UK, we also have parent representatives as governors, who are really important in schools. And you have to deal with all of those for every project. And it's very hard work getting them all to agree to something. And none of them have any money. So it's really hard work. So that's why for Hounslow, the grant that was got, we helped them apply for subsidy from the government, and we have helped them to use that to do the job. So real challenges there about small projects still needing to be done, but we grab them together in order to make them deliverable. At the other end of the spectrum, we have hospitals. The main hospital buildings are very large and very intense energy users for all the heating and all the medical equipment that's used in hospitals. And here, I think the difference, because the problem is so big, they actually had to break it down into chunks. And this first phase, that was about £10 million investment, was about taking a fabric first approach. So that's where you need to upgrade the structure of the building, the fabric of the building, whether it's the cladding, the windows, the insulation, in order that if you upgrade the heating systems, then that you need as little heating or cooling as possible, and it doesn't all go out the window. So you need to upgrade the fabric to help do that. So this was phase one, and phase one for £10 million delivered a nearly 30% carbon reduction per year. They've now gone on to do 3 phases, including the building systems upgrades. And so, and they are now a very, very efficient building that is using an awful lot less energy and an awful lot less carbon emissions arising. And you'll see the same thing there around the systems, slightly higher, slightly more interventions, including combined heat and power, which is where you take a jet engine and use it to generate electricity as a big generator, but you take the heat, it gets hot doing that, it's like a jet engine. You take the heat from it to and use that waste heat to drive the heating of the building. It's a very efficient way of doing things. And again, I'm sure you've got it over there. I just don't know if it's called the same thing. So with these ones, the challenges are slightly different. They have live operational environments. A hospital can't close a ward. A hospital can't close at all to get anything done. And so it's a very complex world to provide upgrades whilst you're using the building. There are also significant financial challenges because if your son or daughter was poorly, or your mother or your father was poorly, would you be happy if the hospital bought a new boiler or some new lighting rather than a new piece of medical equipment that your family needed? And that is the type of challenge that hospitals face about competing priorities around core business service of new medical equipment, new doctors and nurses, or boilers, lighting, building controls. And unfortunately, that's why hospitals end up in a pretty bad state. So it's very hard to get funding through, but when you do, it's a great result for the hospitals and the occupants as well. And so for my final example, really just to talk about universities and the London School of Economics, you may have heard of. Well, we have helped them do some very big interventions over a phased approach, again in a live teaching environment, but it boils down to the same types of solutions, as simple as solar panels, LEDs, building controls and boilers. And again, you get the same results. It's 30% savings. And you might say, as a final point, well, 30% saving isn't net zero exactly. However, the thing to think about here is that to achieve the Paris Agreement levels of reduction and to achieve science-based targets initiatives levels of reductions, so we all do our bit, actually 30% that delivers you carbon savings with a 6.5-year payback, for me is really saying this is your platform for net zero. This is the way to do something very commercially sensible as a client that gives you your starting point, and you most probably have to get another 30% out, and at that point you are most probably in the right place to begin offsetting rather than adding further measures. And then I would come back to the final point for me, which is, this is 2 million and there was multiple phases. The last one was 10 million and there was multiple phases. We have delivered in London alone. I need to add them up. So we've got we have delivered about 400 million pounds worth of capital investment in London, and well over £500 million nationally, to maybe closer to 1 billion nationally, just as my organisation, as my team, helping the public sector. And so I am absolutely certain there is a very large opportunity for constructors in Chile to help organisations to decarbonise and to help with their net zero targets and save the climate, as well as making a very healthy business view out of it. And I would be happy to take questions either now, or my colleague Carolina, who is based in Chile. I've shared her details there, and she would also be very happy to take any questions from you, if that's easier for you. And if anybody wants a follow-up conversation in English or either translated, then I would be very happy to do so. At that point, I would hand you back to the moderator, and if there are any questions.
Gracias, Richard, por la presentación, por el marco, muy interesante también los casos que estuviste exponiendo. Vamos a volver contigo en un par de minutos, como tú nos decías, justamente por el tema de las preguntas. Vamos a esperar a nuestro segundo expositor antes de pasar a esa parte. Pero sobre justamente la ronda de preguntas, les quería comentar que ingresen a la plataforma de Menti y hemos actualizado el código para que ustedes puedan ingresar. Es justamente el que aparece en la pantalla, en la barra de abajo, en la pantalla que ustedes en este minuto están viendo. Es el 59 60 90 54. Ustedes ahí ingresan a menti.com e ingresan este código 59 60 90 54 y pueden hacernos llegar las preguntas que tengan para Richard y que también tengan para nuestro segundo expositor. Aprovecho eso justamente para presentarlo. Recibamos a Mike Penny, él es Country Manager para Perú de Glitz. Mike, muchas gracias por acompañarnos hoy. El micrófono y las cámaras son todas tuyas.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Penny. I'm country manager for Gleeds, Peru. I'm not sure if the interpreter is speaking at the moment. Can someone just confirm to me that you're hearing me in Spanish as well?
We're still not hearing you in Spanish, but it's gonna be, I mean, he's gonna do it in any minute now. So if you want to start your presentation, let's do that.
So good morning. My name is Mike Penny. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're delivering net zero in cost and contract management terms. But first of all, if I could just introduce Gleeds a little bit. So Gleeds are an independent construction consultancy. We've been independent since 1885. We operate in 20 countries across the world, have around 2,000 employees. And we operate, including here, I'm based in Lima in Peru. And I was just having an interesting thought about what Richard was saying about the different climates across the world. So of course, when I came from the UK to South America, I thought all the time there was going to be a great deal of sunshine. I was going to enjoy bright sunny days. But of course, as most of you know, Lima spends a lot of its time under cloudy skies. And actually quite a lot of the time it's really quite cold. And just listening to a comment that Richard made about how apartments and homes are heated. So here in Lima, as many people will know, very few apartments have heating. So in these winter and spring months, it can be quite cold. So Gleeds are an independent consultancy operating across the world. We provide project management, contract management, cost management, and specialist construction advice. Before I start my presentation, I just wanted to put this little slide up. I think the most important part of all of our journey towards net zero is that we do that together. We want a sustainable future for our people. That means the projects need to be sustainable, and ultimately we'll gather a sustainable planet, we hope. We have a pathway method of looking at our projects from a contract and cost management perspective with regards to net zero. And we're looking at this fundamentally in 4 stages for our clients. And I'll cover a case study for a major railway investment a little bit later. So in stage 1, I'm sure everybody feels this term to heart being undertaken in stage 1. We're looking towards a very far point in the future. We're unsure how we can achieve very challenging carbon reduction targets to operate in a net zero economy. So in this place, many companies look at what they're doing. They consider that new laws, new legal enforcements, and new social norms and stakeholder expectations will change the way they operate. So we move into stage 2, where we look at significant reductions in emissions from existing business activities. So this is the quick win stage, the opportunities for us to gather what we're doing now and how we can make small changes. So companies look to align their strategy that we would develop in stage 1. They look to focus on how their existing operation can reduce carbon emissions and how they can do that by maintaining operational practices in the future. Into stage 3 and 4. So at stage 3, we're very much looking at renewable energy measures and how these can be used both on site and how sites can purchase green energy. And really, this is about optimization. So the overall reduction and reliance on fossil fuels. So managing assets in different seasons, managing utilization of assets to ensure that the energy is properly benefits both the users and society. All of our natural resources will be scarce. So really ensuring that construction projects, particularly major infrastructure projects, properly use assets and also manage the resources during their use is incredibly important. And really then we move into stage 4, and this feels like a long time in the future, but we must address this now. And that's the impact of embedded carbon. And this is a market differentiator for major constructors and clients in the infrastructure market. Our attention must begin to shift into this stage, where we've previously focused on risk and sustainability as a measure in investments and opportunity. We now need to see this as an emphasis moving towards innovation, differentiating ourselves in the marketplace. And ultimately, we hope at the end of the journey that our net zero target in 2050 is met. So I'm going to summarize some of the expected outcomes in those stages. So what are the real actions we're undertaking? So we expect that in stage 1, we'll have a high-level business strategy. We'll have identified core principles, and our consultants work with major infrastructure clients and constructors to help define these. We'll have carbon champions and sustainable champions in our company, and these champions within the organization will drive the agenda. In stage 2, we'll understand what our baseline is. And we'll have also agreed an overall reduction and a plan, and also more importantly, how this will be measured. We'll establish project boards to manage this transition, and we'll understand what that high-level budget for implementation is. And importantly, and Richard mentioned this, we also need to look at cultural change of both our workforce and ultimately our assets users. In stage 3, we're really introducing those technologies to assist in use of renewable energy, minimizing reliance on fossil fuels, improving measures to reduce water consumption, and considering short-term increases in CapEx costs for long-term benefits in OpEx costs. And again, our CapEx investment, even though we have significant investment in infrastructure projects, the long-term use cost of those assets is much greater. We'll re-baseline during stage 3, and we'll begin to focus on how we can integrate the delivery of these renewable components into our ongoing capital and maintenance projects. And significantly, we must also consider how we're going to be aware of the impact of our organization's net zero implementation has on our brands, on the importance of how others see our organizations. And then ultimately we move into stage 4, where we're looking at considering new technologies, whilst it might not be tried and tested, looking at investment for the whole life of the solution, the impact of the carbon in the whole life of the solution, and also its social and environmental considerations. We expect significant innovation during this period, but we've got to understand that a lot of what embedded carbon journey is about is not necessarily knowing the answers, but having the willingness to explore what's possible. We have to have an appetite for innovation, for risk and reward. We'll develop how we understand governance structures and the need to adapt during this time, and our projects need to consider how they integrate ongoing capital construction and the future assets. This will impact financing, this will impact how we look at our supply chain, this will impact how we look at warranties, and we'll have continuous changing regulation during this period. And it's important that we monitor that. So just quickly, I talked a little bit about what we do as leads to support during these different stages. So In the discovery stage, it's about defining and understanding what the clients want to achieve, how we progress a sustainable strategy into a sustainable delivery mechanism. It's about identifying how we can support at a program level major programs of work operate across huge areas of countries. Significant clients develop across many different cities and countries. We have to look about how we integrate the service need, how we integrate the supply chain, and how we consider medium and long-term clear communication and engagement plans. And we'll look at in stage 2, it's about defining governance structures, establishing KPIs, and looking at optioneering and value engineering. And we'll have some real hard numbers to be able to crunch in this point. So working with clients to understand the cost of these changes to both deliver the asset in a net zero way, but also to deliver a net zero asset. And that's contracting and procurement strategies, which I'm going to talk about in the case study in a second, and also about looking at risk assessment, the risk management strategy. Moving into implementation, this is about management of those KPIs, measuring detailed estimates to ensure that we're meeting our targets, planning and maintenance of our ongoing goals, contract management and reporting, and then looking at quantitative risk assessment to make sure that we're actually tracking risks and benefits in an equal way. And then ultimately capturing data from the previous stages in closure and operation and ensuring that we've embedded in the commercial project delivery what we need to do for the asset to exist in a net zero way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a case study for the high-speed 2 rail network in the UK. So this is a significant capital investment happening now. It's approximately 250 kilometers of railway from London in the south of the UK to Manchester in the northwest. It's going to be an overall investment of almost 100 billion pounds sterling, and Gleeds are the commercial managers for this. So we're operating contract management on the project, and I'm going to focus very specifically on that contract management and how it applies to the model we've just looked at. So HS2's journey to carbon neutral starts right now at the time to act, and very much there's been a rapid emergence of the net zero mindset and a primary focus on planning, design, and how we're going to consider that in the installation and commissioning stage for this major infrastructure project. In stage 2, we're looking at rapid gains. So we need to incorporate the key aspects within the design of HS2 of sustainability. We need to incorporate that in the planning, and then we need to incorporate that in how we will undertake the delivery. The focus has been very much on increasing innovation and collaboration and ensuring supply chain resilience. As we all know, many of our constructors and supply chain partners and material suppliers have suffered during the pandemic. But there is an opportunity here. There is an opportunity with collaboration and innovation to actually improve those relationships and stabilize the marketplace. Stage 3 is all about optimization and circular economy principles for HS2. So an ultimate reduction and reliance on fossil fuels that will save long-term money, management of water resources for the assets, but also management of waste reduction, both during the construction period and in the ongoing use of the asset. And then finally, we consider this project will be an exemplar. The attention to sustainability will shift how we think. Previously, we've been very focused on management of cost and risk. Now we're looking at sustainability as an investment And HS2 considers these very important aspects in this planning stage right now, ultimately across the delivery. So I'm just going to focus on stage one. That's where we're at with HS2. We're in the early stages of development. We're undertaking design. And what are we doing from the narrow lens of contract management? So how can we really change the construction industry from the first point, the contract we put together with clients, with constructors to deliver assets? So we are addressing this by making sure that the contract has the right level of assessment within the works information. So actually using an NEC, the new engineering contract here, which we're also using in Peru. And that's made some significant changes on the projects we're undertaking for the Peruvian government. A collaborative form of contract that has a clear set of principles. And embodied in that, the works information. We've ensured that each contract has clear carbon baselines, has clear carbon targets and methods of monitoring. So the overall carbon minimization obligations set out what we're going to do, but they don't necessarily set out how. And this creates a potential for inconsistency across packages and supply chain. So we should ensure that we also deliver on that how as part of our contract establishment, as part of our works information. So we're also looking at what challenges are faced by rail systems. So we want to deliver targets and we want to learn from the past. Major infrastructure projects have been significantly challenged. But for example, in the London 2012 Olympic Paralympic Games, we supported the delivery in the procurement phase. So it's key at this point in time to embed all those principles inside how we're going to procure. But we do know, and HS2 is no different, that both time and cost pressures can lead to changes, can lead to challenges in delivering these difficult targets. And it can easily lead for carbon targets to be missed, scaled back, value engineered, or perhaps even paid lip service to. Now, here is a key responsibility of both the employer and the contractor. Don't change from the path we're setting out. Also, HS2 has some significant challenges in how the interfaces are managed. Significant packages of construction against packages of rail system delivery. So achieving this balance of managing risk and benefit inside the contract management tool is key to the success at HS2. And lastly, just some very direct matters. So what are we actually doing to drive effective performance in commercial, so cost and contract management? So we're looking at this at a number of stages right now. How we look at tender evaluation. So you're all constructors and you're going to be, or many of you are constructors, and you're going to be bidding for projects in the future. How you implement your own organization's net zero policies, net zero procedures, how you reduce carbon emissions inside construction is going to be part of future tender evaluation. We're putting incentives within those contracts, and we're making sure that there are sanctions to prevent failures. We're developing KPIs. We're looking at how retention can be used to drive sustainability obligations, but we're also putting aspirational contract clauses in. So we're rewarding enhancements and innovation. That's really important. That is going to help us deliver towards that innovative stage 4 stage. We're ensuring that design performance specifications are embedded in the contract and that there is an appropriate appraisal methodology. And that appraisal methodology is whole life cycle evaluation, not just asset, cost, time, or risk-based evaluation. We're working collaboratively. As I said, I'm based here in Peru. We're working with the Peruvian government. We're delivering billions of pounds of hospitals, schools, and river-based anti-flooding infrastructure projects across the whole of Peru, from Lima all the way up to Tumbes, near to the border of Ecuador. That creates lots of different challenges. That creates a need to work collaboratively. And the last thing we're doing is we're ensuring that we're future-proofing, embodying that in the contract today. And I would say that, collaborative contracts like the new engineering contract allow both the employer and the constructor to work together with their consultants to achieve these very difficult targets. So lastly, that's my contact details. I'm the country manager of GLEADS Peru. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk this morning. It's a great opportunity to share across South America with colleagues different ideas. So if you have questions, I'm very happy to take them, or I'm very happy for you to contact me.
Muchas gracias a ti, Mike, por
Thank you, Mike, for your presentation, for the cases that you presented. We've received so many questions through Menti. If you still want to ask any more questions, you still have time to enter menti.com, enter the code that you can see under our screens. You can ask through Zoom, or you can ask your questions. But before starting the questions, I would like to provide the floor. I would like to give the floor to our guests here, because I know that you've been following up very attentively the presentation and you already have some questions for our speakers. Right, yes. Well, first of all, thank you for those amazing presentations. I think these are topics that today are very close to heart and we need to start implementing in our companies. And in Richard's presentation, when he presented the different stages in which he needed to implement the sustainable processes and the importance that the cities are already built. Every year, you're going to build the 1% and the 80% is already there, and this needs to be renewed. So how does the approach changes on the first stages for people that inhabit to change the culture? And as I move forward and I set the next stage of improvement that requires an important investment, therefore those who are owners understand that an investment, a 10-year investment, is important, but not the tenants, for example. So why am I going to have this cost? So a lot of the times that cultural change might progress or might step back. How do we make this change permanent and constant in the future? Because that's where we're headed. Richard, what's your experience in this subject matter?
I think that is a really, really good question. And forgive me, you must be an expert in the field, because that is the hardest piece of the challenge. And also one that we have a view on. We all have these phones. And that's my children. There you go. That's some of my children, and this is their future. And I just need everybody to work hard to deliver the future. The reason I show you the phone is because you can get a whole new phone upgraded just for continuing to pay your utility bill. You don't buy satellite telecommunications and you don't worry about anything else. What you just do is you get communication. I think the solution to the problem is to change the market for buildings and energy so that they come together. And you start to pay you pay for warmth, not for fossil fuels. You pay for having 18 degrees centigrade in every room and 140 liters of hot water every day or per person to shower and do the washing and everything. And you pay for a certain amount of energy in the plug to charge devices. The reason I say that is because what you can do is you can then take that as a repayment mechanism that the occupant pays, and the owner can take that over 10, 15 or 20 years and then drag it all forward and then pay for it once at the front as an upfront capital investment to upgrade the building, a bit like your phone upgrade. And what they do is after that point, you don't need any more net zero energy per annum. It generates as much as it uses because it's really efficient. And so you can now take that comfort plan or that warmth plan and the payments associated with that every year thereafter as a repayment on it. And that way you address the different incentives of the owner and the occupier. And that can happen for major buildings and hospitals as well as for housing. Hopefully that helps.
Sí, una fórmula bien interesante.
Yes, that's a very interesting formula that Richard states. Mike, I don't know if you have an experience or reflection regarding this.
So for me, I think it's all about brand awareness. So, you know, it's a great example, Richard, picking up the phone, but was it an Apple phone or was it an Android phone? Which type of phone was it? So in the future, our brands are going to be net zero brands. And both from a construction marketplace, from an investment marketplace, from the Internet of Things, we're going to reach for brands that have defined themselves as net zero brands. So all of us have to think about how we make our companies net zero brands, and then users will reach out to pick up that net zero brand.
Good answer.
Gracias, Mike. Flavio, yo sé que también
Thank you, Mike. I know that there's another question for the speakers. Yes, thank you. Yeah, this question is for both speakers from both visions on the subject. I want to ask if, in your opinion, implementing a price on carbon emissions can accelerate transition to net zero?
Who first,
Richard?
me? Yes. It's definitely a simple answer and definitely a yes. However, if that is difficult politically, then we have to have other ways too. But yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Mike?
I'd just like to say, I mean, I'm going to be with Richard here. Yes, this is a difficult and challenging target. Unless we make some changes right now, then we won't make the first steps. But in reality, does it have to, excuse me, in reality, does it have to come at a cost? Innovation, collaboration can see us implement sustainable and net zero construction and building management systems without the need for there to be a cost. We don't know what that innovation will look like. So that's in my stage 4. We don't really know what those new technologies are going to deliver. But if we don't seek them out, then yes, there will always be this charge, that kind of carbon offset charge. Actually, really what we want to reach out for is doing net zero, but for the same cost that we're doing our current construction, our current asset management. We just don't know what that will look like yet. And that requires innovation.
Or Mike, to build on that, 2 things. One, we don't expect to pay for a contractor delivering a construction project without fatalities. You know, that's not, you're not allowed to charge extra to adopt health and safety working practices. If we're to treat you're not allowed to inhabit a building, you're not allowed to work in a building in a way which creates hazards for the occupants, hazards even, not actually suffering injury. I would suggest what we can all do is to treat the health and safety of future generations as a result of the way we design and build and inhabit buildings equally, and apply the same laws and rules. And I think you'll find things change overnight. And you know, that won't need a carbon price, because all of a sudden chief execs will turn their brands to be net zero, zero harm, and net zero companies, definitely.
Perdón. Adicionalmente, bueno,
Additionally, one way is to force you and another way is to convince you. For example, in economic taxonomy that in the European Union is applying right now. These are different tools that could help us to have this transition. Right. In fact, one of the questions that's causing the highest hype on the platform, how to reduce the impact without these economic risks. Richard, what has been the experience on the UK? What is the path that you've followed to have a progress in this subject without these economic punishments?
Ooh, without economic punishment to the owner? That's a really good question. Now, two things. Firstly, lots of these measures don't cost anything or have an 100% sensible investment case, which means they might cost something, but they will deliver savings very quickly. So everybody should be doing those anyway. To do the more ambitious projects, what the UK government has done is looked at the overall cost to the nation, including health and education outcomes, but also job creation and the benefit of economic recovery and from business growth, and how that all falls into the government's pocket as tax and income. And what they have done as almost an angel investor, if you like, has said that actually we can afford to subsidize some of these markets to start. So we will give innovation funding, or we will give the public sector some subsidy to get the market going. And so that will get the supply chains, the products, the services moving, and that will help them to drive down costs and get the economies of scale, so that when private sector investors have to then participate, that they are then again at an economically justifiable price. So there is a role for governments to play in policy and subsidy, and to create markets, then for the private sector to invest in and to continue it. But it can all work, and look at it as a great business opportunity rather than as an economic punishment.
Sí. Mike, ¿cuál es tu experiencia en esto?
Yeah, for me, what I would add here
Mike,
is
what's
that,
your experience in this?
yeah, we do have to be more effective in our other areas of operation to release the opportunity to invest capital. We do have to be more effective in our other areas of operation. So, 25 years ago, when I joined the construction industry, we spent a lot of time arguing after we'd finished a contract. So we went to the law courts, we undertook litigation. Companies were forced into bankruptcy because of poor payment regimes. Over time, we've undertaken more collaborative ways of working. We've refined our construction contracts to make them fairer and more open. We have the Construction Act in the UK, which prevents paid when paid clauses. It supports the management of the supply chain. So it's this collaboration that I see as an opportunity across the world to allow us to release both our thinking. We need time for our management resources to actually look at these opportunities. We need time for our organizations to deliver new ways of working. And therefore we have to be better at doing some of the things inside our contracts and inside our management methodologies to ensure we're doing it better, to give us time to deliver net zero without extra cost.
Gracias por ese mensaje, un gran desafío en realidad que tenemos como sector.
Thanks for that message and for the challenge we have as a sector. Here's a comment that I want add a question to us for both. It's incredible what the measurements and the data show, but also the little that is considered for the decision making in the companies of the area. So the question would be, what would we add so that the companies take this seriously and we're able to implement this a lot faster for both speakers? Mike, let's begin with you.
For me, it is about begins where the investor starts their decision to invest. That might be in a new asset, that might be in their existing assets. And it's setting those initial measurements inside the decision. So a government investment inbound into a country, but that is linked to sustainable innovation or that is linked to specific carbon targets. A major employer, so we work with a lot of major employers across the world who have a large number of built assets, can choose to identify their brand as one that is going to target net zero and they're going to make differences. So that is the beginning. So this really lands upon the government investors, the major institutions who have the opportunity to change how they will measure success for those of us that deliver things for them. We deliver buildings, we deliver services. So that's what I would say. That has to come from the investment decision, driven by governments or driven by major institutional investors.
From my side on that one, I think the root of the question is about what do companies value when making decisions. Even 2 years ago, the thing they valued most was money. However, we are seeing now this slightly move to be a more sophisticated value decision-making framework. Things like the people, the shareholders and the pension funds are beginning to say to large companies that actually, unless you can show that you have the right environmental and social governance, we're going to move you from. Sorry, there's a bit of feedback there. I don't know if there's a. We're going to move our funds away from your business, or we're going to, that money that we lend you as a corporate finance, we're going to charge you more for it because we can't put you in our high performing green finance fund. So there's that one. The other one is also staff. In the UK, there is a massive shortage of key staff and certainly for highly talented staff. And they are now demanding that organizations demonstrate their value. The young, the people graduating, the people whose futures we are trying to preserve are saying to their employers, as a talented individual, I will only come to you if I can see how you are helping to preserve my future. And so for talent and for money through investors, and for so many reasons, it really is moving away from a pure economic challenge.
Sí, es un gran cambio que estamos viviendo en realidad a nivel.
Yes, it's a great change we're leaving as a society. And you had a question that you sent us through the platform. Well, there's a question there. Somebody asked us by our vision as Acciona, as the company I am working in. I believe it's very important to have this vision we had several years ago, where we managed to see in sustainability several areas, and among one, an economic one. It's clear that we need to place our responsibility and our commitment with the future generations. But also, this has to do make economic sense. It's got to be sustainable economically. And we have several studies with KPI that show data that to be sustainable is profitable. So this is not just, which is very relevant to have the responsibility being of developing a business model that thinks about the future generations, but also will allow you to have a profit on it. So it is not just a conviction, and that is conveyed to all the team, and we're strongly committed to this, but also it needs to be profitable economically, and this has been proven with the figures. So many of the issues we have covered today make a lot of sense. This transition, the roadmap that has come from responsibility to report, then do no harm is not just enough, and now move towards this being regenerative or driving certain measures that will help us to achieve carbon neutrality that Acciona, for example, achieved it in 2017. So the goal is to be net zero in the following years. So this can be achieved not only with conviction, but also implementing measures. We talked about the carbon price that for example, internally in construction works with those funds being generate certain measures to decarbonify our activity. For example, in Chile, we have a pilot program to replace diesel generators. This is something that we normally use in construction. So we have functioning in a jail in Talca that we're building a generator which is renewable. It uses solar panels, batteries, and replaces a diesel generator. This was a pilot program. Since it was successful, we bought the equipment, and now we're moving it to another project in the north of Chile, where it's going to work as well as it did in the testing phase. So these are measures that are financed by their performance. And of course, innovation. Innovation is fundamental to be able to use the processes to be able to accelerate the transition to a net zero. Richard, I don't know if you have any example of a project that economically has been profitable to be able to convince those stakeholders that it's important to advance in this issue.
Yeah, so all those projects I showed you were profitable. They've all had an investment that delivers a saving that more than pays for the upfront investment. I don't know how. I mean, if you want low or no cost interventions, there are many that you can do on a building in use as well. Simply recommissioning the building management system or the temperature set points can save 5 or 10% of the building's energy bill every year. And there's no cost other than an engineer coming around to do it. Maybe to reiterate, there isn't an economic barrier to taking significant steps towards net zero. There's lots of examples, and every one of my examples was an economically positive investment. There's no technical reasons why not. We have enough solutions now to go very far down the way. For me, this is actually about how we drive the market to drive the scale and the pace of adoption of net zero projects. And that for me is a communications challenge. And it's about confidence. It's not about technical, it's not about economic, it's not about legal. We've got everything we need to do. We just need people to get on with it and demonstrate it in each market that you can have all of those savings and plenty. I'll finish by saying, I mean, really, I can't make this any plainer. 100% of the value of your business is at stake over the next 5 years if you cannot make a shift to being a net zero constructor. You have every reason to have a push because the whole of your business is at stake. But much more importantly, this is the single biggest global opportunity for your business to be more successful and more purposeful and to make more money, but making money doing a good thing. It's the biggest thing ever to hit the planet. And it really would advocate and support everybody to do everything they can for the rest of their careers to pursue this golden opportunity for good growth.
Sí, Mike,
Yes, Mike, moving to another issue and using your experience in the Latin American market, our audience asks, how behind or how advanced are we in Latin America in these issues?
So I, as well as being country manager for Glitz Peru, I'm also the commercial lead on our work with the UK government as part of the UK delivery team, working alongside the Autoridad para Reconstrucción con Cambios, so the Authority for Reconstruction with Changes, delivering 74 schools, 17 hospitals, and billions of dollars of flood protection. And right now, making changes in a sustainable way. We are making more sustainable projects, sustainable hospitals, sustainable schools, and more importantly, we are developing river-based flood protection that really will last. One of the major failures of reconstruction in many Latin American countries has been that reconstruction has been temporary. Latin America suffers, as does a number of other continents in the world. Actually, talking to some of my colleagues in India about this, Latin America suffers from significant flooding in lots of parts of its country. That damage is often rebuilt just as it was. As part of the reconstruction con cambios change, rebuilding those assets so they are considering future incidents. We are redeveloping river-based flood protection to not only consider the flood that happened previously, but also what will happen in the future. And in a sustainable way. A strange example that I was talking about with a colleague, it rains a lot in Peru, an awful lot, and it's not so different to some parts of Chile. But large amounts of Peru are a desert. So actually, the small amount of water that flows down some of the rivers is incredibly important for irrigation. So it's not just possible to create a dam. What we need to do is think about sustainable solutions. So do I see that we're really making a change? Yes, I do. Right now, I see that happening in the Latin American region. Is it enough? And is it the same as in comparison to other countries? I don't think any country in the world yet has started, or any region has started to really make huge steps in this arena. So what's really great is it's an opportunity for us all. The opportunity is here in Latin America as much as it is in Europe. The message we're saying is that it is an opportunity, and in the next 3 to 5 years, the opportunity will turn from one that is positive to a risk if you have not joined that journey. But in summary, yes, we've started those footsteps in Peru. Great project working alongside the Peruvian government, supported by our colleagues from DIT in the UK and here in Peru. So yes, I see those changes.
Muchas gracias, Mike, por
Thank you
esa-
very much, Mike, for that vision that you give us on Latin America. Regretfully, we are approaching to the end, but I would like to ask a last question that has been very interesting in Menti, and it is a question for both speakers. Which are the recommendations that you provide the companies that are just beginning this roadmap of sustainability? Richard?
Know your own footprint because you have to be authentic as providing service to one of these organizations, and then get involved in the local communities of net zero people and find out what they're doing would be my 2 pieces of advice. And the piece of advice for your clients would be LEDs, building controls, solar panels, they all make 100% sense. Just do them. So hopefully they're two good pieces.
Yeah, I think I would say set out a plan, really, and ensure that everyone in your organization understands what that plan is, and make that plan smart. Make it possible for you to measure it, make it be realistic, and make it have clear timescale goals. I think also as well, be part of communities like the one we're in today, because you don't have to be a leader in this marketplace right now. If it's the first steps you're making, you can be a follower, and being part of a community of construction and other management professionals is really very helpful for companies making those first few steps. So take part in forums like this, use the information, and develop your organization's plan.
Muchas gracias por esos mensajes que yo creo que dan justamente el comentario final. Quería agradecerles, Mike y Richard, por el tiempo que se han tomado por
Thank you for Mike and Richard for the time you've taken, for the messages, and also the answers and the conversation. Please have a nice weekend.
Thank you too. Thank you.
Muchas gracias a todos. Buen fin de semana.
Despedimos a nuestros panelistas, pero no nos despedimos todavía.
So we ask our panelists, we are not going to say goodbye yet, but although we are approaching to the end of our activity. But before you leave, I would like to ask you once again to enter Menti and answer the questions on the screen. How would you evaluate this session? This is a great help for us because with your feedback that you have provided in the latest session, we have been able to improve the meetings, and we can have to meet again. But also, due to this, please tell us the learnings you've taken from the talks, concepts, or any idea that would be left in your mind. So what core idea did you receive from this? Please, let's begin with you. Well, first of all, the implementation is slow, it's expensive, it's difficult, and what's more important is that we need a full commitment of the company. It is not that easy to make the decision, but once you've made it and you've entered the roadmap, you need to be you need to have a full vision of it. To be sustainable in time, the company, once it makes a decision to change forever, to continue being in the industry, because the industry and the view in the future already change. So, Flavio, mainly the best thought is to be sustainable is profitable. We have to keep that in mind and that commitment to convey all these objectives to all the members of the team, and with incentives for achievement of all the goals that have been set. And in that way, you achieve a commitment, and you can be happy that you're doing things properly, that you're working for the sustainable development, working in a community with all the stakeholders to be able to achieve this development of all the community. So in that line, it is very valid to invite all the members of the Chilean Chamber of Construction to be informed of all the benefits to be a sustainable company. For those who have been connected with us today, the same thing. It is a great challenge, and to see this activity, because we need more of this to motivate yourselves and to have a plan. And also there's a comment that I think is relevant by our speakers, that it's necessary and fundamental to make operations profitable. Maybe not now, but maybe in the long run. But I don't know what the experience of you have been. Well, from our point of view, when you implement, for example, some project that is framed within the European taxonomy, you have economic benefits because it has lower costs. So you begin with a baseline which is a lot more competitive when compared to other companies who don't have this criteria. So the beginning with the financing. Now, if you implement energy efficiency in the infrastructures that you're developing, you're going to have a long-term benefit with lower maintenance costs and other lower costs in general. So it is fundamental to have that vision that it's not a cost, it's an investment. Very interesting, you're saying. Overall, today, people who make the decisions to buy a house are younger. So they are a lot more conscious and a lot more concerned about sustainability. And a differentiating element is produced when I add more technology, because I know the initial investment is higher, but in the long run, it will favor my environment and myself. In the old times, you bought a house. Today, we're thinking about cities, neighborhoods, and projection of the families, of course, quality of life. So placing all these elements in the project and looking at a whole and not only as it was being built is fundamental to be sustainable. So thank you for being with us today in this last thematic session of this 2021 edition. We hope, of course, all of you to connect the next Wednesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. for the closing activities of this great event we've had in the last weeks. I will also say goodbye. It was a pleasure to be here with you in these sessions, and I hope that instances like this are performed a lot more with the learnings. So thank you for tuning in and the participation, and have a great weekend. Thank you very much. Until the next time.